Okay, hopefully this thing's working. Giving me a lot of fucking trouble, honestly. So last video I did, what were things that really bothered me when I was in Japan this time? And today I will do, I guess, what are things that I liked about Japan this time? And sort of a stream of consciousness. I'm going to ramble as usual about certain aspects, but as usual, I said the food quality is incredible for the price that you pay. Cheap food is so fucking good, dude. Um, what can you say? I mean, again, the only things that are kind of iffy is cheese is kind of iffy, and fruits and vegetables can be a lot. But generally speaking, cheap food, cheap food is such high quality that you can get by on cheap food and still be pretty fucking satisfied, to say the least. And people often talk about, it's so expensive to be in Japan. And if you're wondering how much money did I spend in Japan, with food and traveling and everything like that, not including that I basically lost $3,000 right when I got there from bad luck. You know what I mean? Just losing that necklace I've had since I was a kid, pants ripped off on the train. Just fucking incredible that customs bullshit that happened. I would say that I probably in 2 months spent $1,200. I don't know exactly. I haven't looked at it. You know what I mean? But I spent I think $1,200, and I was living pretty frugally. And there are caveats because, of course, when I get sick, you know what I mean? My health is not good. So, there's just times I'm just not really going out at all. And of course, because of everything, all the bad shit that was happening, I didn't get to do any far traveling, like going to Kyoto or anything like that. But I would say that you know, and then of course you got to take in the caveat too. When I got to the place, the refrigerator was broken, so I couldn't save any money, you know, food that wise. So every time I ate for 2 months, I had to go out to eat basically. But in 2 months, I spent I would say $1,200. So take that as you will. I think I spent around that. So that's probably, I don't think that's too bad for a place that people say is very expensive. And that's because cheap food is, so fucking good, right? I complained about things that bothered me this time was, I really felt the fake kindness, right? I felt the sort of, insincerity more so this time than other times, Before the fake kindness, it was refreshing, right? You know what I mean? And this time I saw more of the negative aspects of it, which bothered me. But on that same token, I mean, let's be honest, just even people being fake nice to you, it's still kind of refreshing when I think about it, especially the customer service aspect is, man, besides that fucking customs thing, that was fucking bullshit. It's $361. Give me a fucking break. Oh, Jesus Christ, man. So I guess the fake kindness is, it's a double-edged sword, right? You know what I mean? And maybe even like I was talking in that past video, maybe it's not so much a fake kindness or something when you're comparing like kindness levels to other countries, but it's just kind of like how people act there. You know what I mean? Like people don't hold doors open for each other. I was even talking about it with some friends. We were trying to like discuss what are the rudest countries, what are the nicest countries. You know what I mean? Other friends that travel or don't actually live in their own fucking echo chamber. And my number one answers were Georgia. And when I talk about rudeness and like meanness, I'm talking about just kind of like people that are you just kind of like you can't see me because I don't have a webcam, but trying to visualize, you're just kind of like you kind of like pulling back and like, dude, why are you being so weird? Why are you being so like uncool right now? Like, I would say in my experience, like, can't say I've ever had good experiences with anyone from Georgia. Turkey, unfortunately, man, fuck, dude. I love the animal aspect of Turkey, and I've met some nice people from Turkey, but fuck, dude, there's a lot of uncool people that I have met from Turkey. And then after that, it's hard to say. I was thinking like maybe fucking, maybe Morocco and Algeria or something like that. But I was talking to other friends. I'm going off onto a tangent before I talk about, you know, other good things I liked about Japan. And you know what the number one answer when I talk to other friends who, go around traveling or at least, don't live in their own echo chamber, so to speak, was Poland and Germany. And I was thinking about it, I was like, Poland and Germany. And I was like, I guess I've had a couple uncool interactions with people from Germany, but not too many. But then I was thinking, Poland, man, fuck, dude. Actually, I can't think of many cool Poland people Polish people that I've ever met. So actually, I don't know if you want to put in the comments. Actually, Poland was the number one answer for rudish people. And some there was some cliche things that we might think of Americans, like French people or something like that. But that was actually the number one answer, and the number one kindest country and people that I heard was people from Italy. Again, put in your comments what you think. But um, anyway, something else that I liked about Japan, and I got to say this again, it's a double-edged sword, maybe. Depending on maybe the perspective that you're thinking at the time, maybe there's a potentially not good aspect of it, but the whole idea, and it's I like it because I do think there's a distinction between doing something maliciously and not doing it maliciously. And Japan really has that sort of, I talked about it before, that sort of, as long as you aren't hurting anybody, you can kind of do whatever you want, right? Even things that are sort of like legally gray area zones, let's say. You know what I mean? I mean, if you know you know what I'm talking about. I'm like, I don't know, dude. Like, I'm telling you, I could tell you some crazy stories, dude. It is refreshing though. I guess it's because Japan is so like if you do something wrong legitimately, it goes on your family too. So it's the whole like honor kind of thing maybe. But when you're in Japan and you see people like again that I love that the contrast of like city life compared to like go to like because maybe most people when they go to Japan they're only ever going to visit Tokyo, like say something like Shibuya or like Shinjuku or like Harajuku, whatever the fuck you're going, right? Or maybe they don't actually go like Tokyo is fucking huge, right? There's like suburbs outside of it that are much more peaceful and you know very kind of innocent almost. But I like that contrast of this the city life to the peaceful life. But when you go to the city life and then you see that contrast of how people interact with each other differently, and especially when you see like man, just talking about like the sexual aspect of Japan, it's really pretty crazy, especially because you got all the cops there and everything like that. And technically, prostitution I think is technically illegal in Japan. But the biggest prostitution areas are just fucking, right. It's right. If you ever know where I'm talking about, like in that Kabukicho area or whatever, there's the fucking hooker alley kind of thing. And there's that fucking, the net cafe where people, if you're poor, you go to have sex, whatever, just get your dick sucked while someone else is on the computer, like basically, literally, dude. You know, but people watching and everything like that, and you see that aspect of Japan of, you see the older husband kind of thing, and you see the older husband and he's just with this like fucking quest girl of questionable ages, let's fucking call it. And you see and the police just watch it and they don't care. And I was talking to people, and I talked about this before the last time I was in Japan. I heard about those loveless marriages and everything like that in Japan, sort of thing, or sort of like the idea that the wife allows the husband to go to the city because the husband's working at home in the city all night anyway. You know what I mean? And then by the time he gets home, to maybe that sort of, suburban life, you live like you're jam packed like sardines, maybe there's not a lot of places to have sex, whatever. And, space is so limited, right? Although, again, I've said before, despite being, jam packed like sardines, Japan is not very claustrophobic feeling, despite that, I don't think. Even when even when I've been in apartments right next to people, it's pretty peaceful, to be honest with you. But despite the living circumstances, but it's crazy when you see that really out in front of you, and you're like, man, that's the husband where the wife is just like, hey, as long as you come back home and we're in this together, you can do whatever the fuck you want because I know that you are with me in this endeavor of me and my kid. And I've seen that firsthand. I've talked about before. I've seen that friend. I met him and his, well, not real wife anymore, but they stay together for the kid. But I'm always like, does the wife know that you're out fucking girls all the time? And he's like, I don't rub it in her face, but yeah, she probably knows. And I'm like, is she allowed to have sex with other guys? And he's like, yeah, she is. And I'm like, but do you think she does? And she's like, no, because you see people in Japan, they don't really talk to each other. So there's like a very small demographic of like slayers in Japan, basically, right? Then you got the whole money aspect of if you can actually have, you're that charming to actually fuck a lot. You know what I mean? You need to have money for the love hotel, where the fuck is going on. But just to say, like when you see that, it's just fascinating, like how blunt it is, right? It's fascinating how America and America, I was talking about what is the rudest countries, what are the nicest countries. I'll tell you what, no person ever that I've ever talked to has actually ever said that America is the rudest country they've ever been to. That's one of those like these one of like these naive things about Americans is you see how Americans are very delusional and naive. You know what I mean? About everyone that, oh, we're not free enough in America, blah blah blah. People are too mean. And it's like, dude, I've actually never really talked to anyone who has ever said America is the rudest country they've been to. I actually, as a matter of fact, I even had one girl, she told me America is the nicest country she's ever been to, which maybe from a certain perspective could be because with the way people act in America nowadays, I've said before, you go to some of these other countries or you actually talk just to other people of like not all this fucking ridiculous, overly radical social justice warrior LGBTQ shit. People will openly talk to you about that. They wish you were killed. No joke. And it's like, bro, you have no idea about how free you are in America. People are talking about killing you when I'm in this other country. They don't fucking like you. And like seriously, it's crazy. And America's like, oh, we're not free enough here. It's like, dude, boy, pray to God you do not go to some of these other countries or you do not talk to some of these other people from other cultures. They do not fucking like you whatsoever, dude. You know? And then even the countries that accept you for, the way you act, they don't want you either because they know they only, I've said that story before. They only want you here in this other country because they know you want free healthcare because you're a fucking, selfish American that wants everything for free, right? But, in terms of America being, holier than thou and delusional, and say sex culture in America, maybe, you go to other countries, talk to other people, sex is so much more open. And in America, not that people are not doing things that maybe they're not so quotation marks supposed to do, but they're much more fake about it or again the holier than thou. But Japan is so blunt about it. When I'm watching these old guys fucking these young girls, not literally, so to speak, you know what I mean? But you see, what's going on, right? You're like, wow. And I've talked to many people about it, foreigners living in Japan and Japanese people, and they're like, no one cares. No one cares. Like, I would compare it to, have you ever seen Jurassic Park? Jurassic Park where the Nedry guy, the fat guy, he's giving the one bad guy all the dinosaur eggs or whatever, the dinosaur DNA. He's like, don't say my name. He's like, oh, we got, I don't remember his name is Watson, Dyson, whatever the fuck his name is here. Watson, Dyson, Bison. I don't remember the fuck the guy's name is. Tyson? It's been a long time since I've seen the movie. We got this guy here, we got this guy here. And he's like, nobody cares. And that's literally like when I was like people watching, you go to these places, you just like watch people and you like actually observe the culture and you see how people interact with each other. And I'm like, man, dude, that grandpa, he's just about to fuck that girl, isn't he? And like people are just like, doesn't matter, foreigner, actual Japanese, like, there's like, who cares? No one cares. No one cares. It's like, are they gonna hurt each other? Then nobody cares. You know what I mean? The police are right there, they're watching it, and it's like, man, Japan is so, it's like, even if there's like those legal gray area zones, you're like, wow, it's really like that. And Jesus Christ, man, I definitely had girls coming up to me, and I'm like, bro, are you serious? And she's like, no one cares. Basically, we're not gonna do anything bad. We both want it, and it's like, man, Japan is just so. It's amazing how the sort of just as long as you aren't hurting anybody, you're left to your own devices in certain areas. And of course, some people, they told me they're like, well, that's because you're doing it here. You know what I mean? They're like, if you go to a different place, you know what I mean? you're gonna be frowned upon. And they're like, but it's just that aspect of Japan of like when you're in the city, it's almost like a given. It's like this is where you're allowed to have fun. But make sure when you come back to the suburbs, the family is back together. You're back doing what you're supposed to do. Right? It's just such a clear contrast of how people act differently. Right? Again, it's like, fascinating to people watch in terms of that aspect. And it's interesting to me too because I do believe there is a maliciousness, a difference between being malicious and not being malicious. And yeah, so I think just people left to their own devices, and you see people, you see the way that cops treat drunk people. Man, I saw guys trying to fight cops or whatever, and the cops were so Jesus Christ so nice to people. These drunk guys, and it's like, hey, we know he's just drunk. We know he doesn't mean it, so we treat him with kid gloves. It's just is that sort of malicious. Like as long Japan is a very, again, there's a lot of fake kindness and a lot of interactions bothered me this time, but I don't necessarily view Japanese people as being malicious in general, right? Of course, I've definitely had some bad interactions, but generally speaking, there wasn't like malicious actions, so to speak, right? So I don't know. I mean, I enjoyed that kind of perspective, and I guess maybe in a sense too, like on a deeper level, it's made me continuously, as I grow older, you know, God, I said before, one of my problems in life is I was fucking force fed the red pill so early, right? Like I would much say when you're growing up and you see the interactions between people, I would say, just take a low dose of the red pill to see the way the world really works, right? But I was force fed the red pill, you know what I mean? Growing up so unpopular, and then boom, lickety split, I became popular. People treated me totally different. And then boom, lickety split, I don't know how much longer I'm going to be alive. You know what I mean? I'm like, wow, you know what I mean? Like, Jesus Christ, oh, people treated me different. They didn't fucking care about me anymore. You know what I mean? Oh, then I became cool again. Oh, people care. It's like, man, those kind of interactions, and you see like sexual interactions, and you know, even that aspect. Talking more about the sexual aspect of Japan. You know, kind of going off in a sort of a different direction from the same place, maybe. But you really see how, man, God, the submissiveness of Japan was really, you know, forefront and center. You know what I mean? This time, like seeing the interactions with girls, like some of those sexual interactions, like man, just like lambs to fucking cock slaughter at certain points, Um, and I've talked to friends and I've talked about some of these stories too, and they're like, dude, you got to really like Japan. A lot of women there, their ideal is really they want to be the housewife. And that's not that the housewife can't necessarily have sex with somebody else too. Like I said, I was even talking to, I'm all over the place here. I was even talking to a friend. I went to dinner, or we went drinking. I didn't drink, but they drink, But we're just having an aspect, and he's a foreigner, and he's lived there for years now. But he's not as like ingrained in the culture, maybe so to speak. And his wife is Japanese, and we were talking about it. We are talking about like how oh yeah, the husband's allowed to go fuck other people, and the wife can technically do whatever as long as you come home. And he looked at me and he's like, "Wait, you serious?" And they looked at the wife. He's like, "We're allowed to do that?" And the wife kind of like put her head down. She's like, "Well, not all of us are okay with that, but yeah, some of us are." He's like, "We're allowed to do that." He's like, "Are you serious? This is the first time you're telling me?" If you're having like honest conversations, he's like, "Well, yeah, kind of." And he's like, "What the fuck? No one told me we could do this." Right? But Japan, yeah, you see it. Japan kind of has that aspect of the wife is the housewife, like the wife, they almost ideal that, right? The ideal of being the housewife to it's almost kind of like contradictory, right? It's like Japan is not a place where you necessarily think of like a lot of, let's say, cliche alpha males, right? And sometimes even actually seeing people. I saw, okay, we're not going to get into that. Okay, but Generally speaking, I think from an American's perspective, you don't think of Japan as a lot of, alpha male kind of Chad guys. And certainly, like I said before, a lot of people aren't having sex, right? Because people don't talk to each other. But, the women there are so submissive that you basically, like I said, I've been with girls and it's like, oh my God, it's like literally like, it's like, Jesus Christ, is like, you want me just to like fucking rape you like the first time I fucking like met you or something? And, of course, I can appreciate the idea, a man is a man, a woman is a woman, especially when you think about, it's almost funny nowadays. You think about how woke people try to be and, don't objectify women. And then I almost feel like, but more and more, you just see women be like, just fucking rape me, basically. You know what I mean? Like, just do whatever you want to me, daddy. You know what I mean? Oh, but I'm super woke, you know what I mean? I think it's almost that cliche, like the biggest feminist is the one that wants to get just fucking dominated or something sometimes. They say there's a joke, right? But Japan is, God, you see that. Like, again, talk to a friend, and he's like, man, my wife, you know what I mean? She's just like, basically, I'll just do whatever I want to her. You know what I mean? It's like, I mean, they're just so submissive. Like, I don't know. It's crazy. Like I said, I feel like I'm constantly red pilled, just overfed, God, and from a certain perspective, going to America, I'm just so fucking sick of the overly radical social justice warriors. And so many of, like I said, it's almost funny because it's so popular to be a nerd nowadays. You know what I mean? So from that perspective, I'm saying it's so popular to be a nerd nowadays. So Japan is quotation marks cool now. It wasn't cool to be a nerd back when I was a kid, but which I always say is funny because it was more cool to be gay when I was growing up than it was to be a nerd. People don't want to act like that, but it's totally fucking true. Um, but come to America. It's so acceptable to be a nerd. Oh, we're so overly radical. Social justice, we're LGBTQ, blah blah blah. And it's like, and then you go to Japan, and your whole ideal, if you actually think like that, how the fuck are you gonna get laid if you fucking respect women that much, right? From a certain perspective, I'm saying, right? Obviously respect everybody, but you know, I don't know. You know, fuck me, dude. I don't know. I guess it's a oh boy, like I said, constantly. Oh man, jeez. Anyway, I'm rambling. This video's already 20 minutes, but basically, what I was getting at is I do appreciate the idea of Japan. Of there is almost an idea of just you can just that idea like man, you're not gonna hurt anybody. Everything is okay. It's kind of like refreshing, right? You know what I mean? That idea that I guess Japan trusts people so much. Like, hey, this isn't malicious. You know what I mean? I'm not sure exactly how to describe it, but it's pretty wild. Some places in Japan when you see how people act, and then you see the contrast going back home, so to speak. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, I feel like the video's like, subscribe, comment, share, support the channel if you want. I appreciate it. PayPal, super chat, Patreon if you want, or super thanks. I don't know. Like I said, I still know webcam and this microphone is hard enough to even get to work.